Jeanette, thank you so much for coming to join me on the podcast today.
Sure. Thanks for having me.
Would like to start off with you telling us a little bit about your business and what you do, the mission, the vision, and kind of start there.
Yeah, absolutely. Jayco has been long in the works. I've been doing a lot of different things with it, but I just branded it this spring. Jayco, obviously Jeanette Cofer, but it also stands for collaborativeness, cohesiveness. There could be a lot of things in that company, and eventually if I want to do that. But the two primary things that Jayco and I stand for, mission-wise, is really elevating executives. And it doesn't mean I just work with executives. I work with leaders of all forms, mostly mid to small size companies, but the mission is elevating their success. So sometimes that's professional, sometimes that's personal. A lot of times those two things cross. Not a lot of times, most times.
Right.
Just making their lives easier and their companies and organizations more profitable.
Awesome.
So,
how'd you get into this type of work?
Yeah, great question. Again, long time working or in the works. So I spent 15 years in banking in the beginning of my career, and I got recruited over to work at a startup for building SaaS model technology selling into pharmaceutical companies. Okay. And when I joined that startup and going from a corporate model to a really tiny, I was one of the first 10, worked directly for the CEO that was a friend of mine at the bank. I really found this passion from that point forward in what does leadership really look like? Big banking leadership is very different from working directly for a CEO. What do they stand for? How do you build not just the vision, but the people around that and getting in the right talent? So I did that for the next, over a decade, and then went from that startup to 3 more. And did fractional roles and built teams and did a lot of sales, just did a lot of different things. The pause I took in that, Chris, was what did I love about all of those things and who do I want to be? What do I want to contribute when I don't have to work anymore? And that's how Jayco was born. So I've done a lot of consulting in between there, but that coaching aspect of I haven't been always just a coach. I've been in the carrying the bag. I told that to a really young person the other day, and they're like, "What? What's that mean?" Like carrying your briefcase and your computer and all that into the office. I've done the roles.
Right.
I've made the mistakes. I've seen the mistakes being made. So now it's my turn to sort of give back and help younger and even some seasoned people not make the same mistakes and just elevate their success.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So you mentioned you were doing some fractional work. Did you call it fractional back at that point in time, or did you call it consulting? I feel like it's kind of a new term, but not so much.
Well, and you know the fractional world like crazy, right?
Yeah.
So, from that first startup where I spent almost a decade, and then the 3 or 4 after that, it was always consulting.
Right.
So I'd go in as, chief of staff for, a med device wearables company for a little while. They did call that fractional, but that's only in the last couple years. Prior to that, it was consulting.
Right.
And then there's this really neat differentiator between consulting and coaching. So there's a shift there on when I work with people in a coaching fashion, I'm not going in there to tell them what to do. I'm guiding them.
Right.
I know what they probably should be doing a lot of times, but there's a really fine shift there as well to let them believe that it's something that they're being guided to do, and they do it on their own rather than the consulting piece.
Right. So you're saying the difference between consulting and coaching is more asking questions and kind of like leading them to figure out answers on their own, as opposed to saying like, this is what you should do.
Yeah. I mean, when people hire you as a consultant, that's what they're paying you to do, right?
Right.
When they hire you and your firm, they're paying you to come in and say, here's exactly what you need to be doing, and here's how we're going to do it for you. It's I think been really valuable and beneficial to have had that, because now even though I've got that at the back of my head, in my mind, and in the end they usually land there, but having someone embrace and own that is really empowering for them.
What's it like shifting from being someone that's working in a business, doing and driving, to taking a step out to be more of an advisor and a coach and asking, what was that transition like?
In the beginning, it was exhilarating. So I'm like, oh gosh, I'm going to work just for me. And then also, as you probably know, then there's the element of like, oh my gosh, I'm working just for me. You're in charge of everything, right? And I've had people working for me in smaller capacities to help support, but it's me. So that's a blessing and a curse all at the same time, all the time.
Yeah.
But in the end, too, when there's some things here that we've talked about on what does it look like in the end, and is if I can contribute to someone's life or someone's business and have them tell me you've made a difference, whether that's in profits, people, ultimate fulfillment, then I know I've done my job.
Yeah.
So,
what does it look like when you first start with a new client for like executive coaching? What are some of the first couple questions that you ask someone, or like how does that process kind of kick off?
Another great question. A lot of times it's someone will come to me with not so much a problem, but a need. Mm-hmm. So when I define what that need is and they say, here's why I want you to come and work with me or for me, right, then I know which set of questions to ask.
Got it.
I'm an intense listener. I'm an intense, extraction of information from people. I do that really, really well. Without them feeling like I'm, coming in and asking them like 10,000 questions and doing this, for an hour straight, right, which I'd like to do, but I have a good technique of doing that. But most of the times they're hiring me for a reason. There's a purpose. Mm-hmm. Half of that time, it's not for what they think that they've hired me for.
I was gonna. That's what I was trying
right?
to get at.
Yeah.
Like I was curious.
I wondered because that is it to a T.
Yeah.
They'll say, I have this amazing vision and nobody's buying into it.
Right.
So when I sit down with the top 5, 10 people on their executive leadership team, and I ask each one of them, what's the vision? What's your CEO or your leader, CEO of smaller companies, but this could be leaders of different lines of business within a mid-sized company as well. And if they're all behind a closed door and they answer that question with authenticity, they're all different. Mm-hmm. And so then that's the real problem. It's not that they can't get buy-in. It's not that they, haven't developed this idea of what their vision is. Mm-hmm. It's a lot of times the communication. Is it clear? Is it concise? Is there a plan around it? A lot of times the strategic plan and the vision planning isn't really, really buttoned up or neat. And then you've got to have the right people in your wheelhouse and right beside you that not only, a lot of people can say, yeah, I buy in, I believe you, mm-hmm, but do they have the talent to help you execute?
Right.
And then if they do, does the CEO have the mindset to be able to lead them? That's the other big thing I see and have seen for over 20 years.
Absolutely.
So.
Yeah, it's, to your point, someone comes and says, hey, we've got an issue or a problem, you start peeling back the onion, and you're like, actually...
You're the problem. No, not really.
Which could be. It
could be something that they're doing.
Right.
Or, sometimes it's even just minor shifts.
Yep.
Very minor shifts. Or knocking out, I have this proprietary method I've built over the years it's a 5-step process. The beginning of it is, the awareness. Self-reflection and awareness. Mm-hmm. And, we get stuck sometimes I've done it this way all the time for a long time, and it's always worked, and then something else shifts. Mm-hmm. Whether it's the economy, whether it's your team, whether it's what your, stockholders are expecting you and your company to perform at. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times we put in limited thinking and barriers in our own way to actually achieving it.
Absolutely.
So, there's all kinds of really neat techniques I'm certified in doing to help get past that.
Can you tell us a little bit more about your 5 steps and some of those?
Yeah.
I don't want to...
I can tell you a little bit.
Yeah, I don't want to
no, it's
for you to expose your proprietary info, but I think it would be interesting for people to understand more kind of the process.
Yeah, and it's tried and true. Underneath each one of the realms, there's differing factors on who it is I'm working with, if it's a smaller team, if it's an individual, if it's I'm a certified life coach, if it's a personal situation, the questions underneath each of those mm-hmm, change, of course.
Definitely.
But the very first thing is the discovery.
Mm-hmm.
Discovery, and the second phase takes the longest. And that discovery includes a lot of that self-reflection. Mm-hmm. Self-reflection as a human, but also reflection in your organization as well, as a whole. And then once we really dive into all of that, then you go through a process of discovering what the barriers are. So when they come to me in the beginning, they say, here's the problem, or here's why I think I need you. And it isn't even always a problem, Chris. Sometimes it's, we're here, we've plateaued, and we want to be here.
Right.
We want to be greater than you already are great.
Right.
You know, sometimes it's that. And those are times too when people have the money to spend to do things.
Right, exactly.
But the times where you're failing and you don't have as much is when you really need it. So that third middle bucket, where is also is a pretty hard place to be, is identifying why you're at that point in time and why you haven't been able to accomplish it without help. Again, that begins peeling back some layers of, you know, is it the person? Is it the talent on the team? Is it the limited resources? You know, what are those things? That's also the section of my methodology where I do a lot of different neat. There's some mindset things that I can do that I'm certified in. I'm certified in DISC plus values, like your core values assessments. Done a lot of work in the Myers-Briggs and Kersey, Dr. Kersey's methodologies, and those are understanding some of those character traits on, you know, who you are as a human, what you value, but then how you work with others on your team as well. So yeah, and then the last two are, you know, the fourth one is really then how do you come up with this plan of accountability? Do you have a business plan? A business plan is different from a strategic plan, which is different from your vision. You know, where those three things get connected, and the final thing is the execution. Execution includes, do you have all the right people surrounding you to fill any gaps in your talent that you have, and then will you let them do it? So it's kind of that in a nutshell with almost everything.
That's nuts. It makes all the sense in the world. And I was recently interviewing someone about like continuous improvement and lean management and all that stuff. And I'm kind of like a nerd for that type of stuff. But I mean, your process makes so much sense and resonates with me, because it's like, we have an issue, let's, you know, whatever it is, let's talk about it. Okay, let's understand, you know, why is this happening? Reflection, coming up with a plan. And so I dig it. It makes sense.
You said something crazy, not crazy, but crazy to me. So at the bank, I did, I led some pretty big operational teams. Within that, I became Six Sigma certified.
No way,
so
really?
I have a green belt. I did Kaizen events, DMAIC process. That was really my first love of like, I can go in easily and see like, if you change this and you reorganize this and you put this software technology in, the process, it's amazing. But if you don't have the right people executing the process, it still won't work.
That's amazing.
So yeah, so it's a lot of what you just said on that lean, that you take it and you apply it to humans.
Define, measure, analyze, improve, control.
Yes, oh my gosh, right. I'm having flashbacks. Yeah, that's crazy, right?
That's so great.
Yeah, but I love, that's sort of in my DNA core that I kind of love to, so now I do that same thing with humans.
Exactly. Interesting work, for sure.
Yeah, it is. I love it. I love it, everything I do.
So it sounds like, you know, going in as a coach, in that specific example, leads to really a lot of like organizational development and a lot of like organizational transformation. I mean, is that accurate?
Yeah.
Tell me more kind of how that plays out.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of some specific examples. It depends, I think, a lot on who I'm working with.
Right.
So, you know, I've had a past client where she was on the board and I was brought in at the board level to help, you know, structurally look at a couple different key employees. So transformation can happen from a lot of different entry points. But what's your question specifically to, like when it's transformed, it's you're performing.
Right.
And people are fulfilled. You know, I have this three like you can't have people, process, people performing their passion. If all those things aren't aligned, your profit isn't going to be there. But you also can't, you know, one of the things I get asked a lot is, what's a great leader look like? You also can't have a great leader that is only focused on the process and the outcome without all of those other things, the people, the passion that the people have, meaning are they the right people with the right talent? And then their, you know, purpose and performance. It's like all of those P's have to add up.
Well, I think where I was going is, you know, just from from coaching and developing leadership, for an organization to advance and be, operate at its highest level, the people leading the business have to be operating at their highest level and understanding their, blind spots or weaknesses or, being aware so that they can get better.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And a lot of times too, and I wish it would happen more often, is when you're working with the CEO and then there's another technique that I use that's the 360. I'm sure you've gone through that or have heard of it.
Yeah.
I do a 360 within an organization, but I also have a few personal connections in there too. So it's not just your boss's feedback and your subordinate and then your peer. You're going to get somebody that's a past mentor or your closest friend or your spouse in some cases, and those have been hugely eye-opening. But I wish companies sometimes would get more into taking the teams and letting them have some individual time with me, because that's really where we can find out, not necessarily is it that someone's not performing because they don't want to or they can't, it's because there's some other thing going on that they haven't disclosed.
Right.
And helping people work through that. And there's other people, even in the past, I'll never forget this woman. Through the Lean Six Sigma, there were a lot of times in the bank, which is why early on I was really successful, is I'd go in and I'd put in a process or a technology and eliminated a whole bunch of jobs, which in the beginning was like great. I was getting all kinds of bonuses and things. And then one night I went to sleep and I thought, I'm impacting so many people's lives. So to be able to take those people and figure out what do they really want to be doing, the ones that were underperforming or were first on the list to get cut were the ones that didn't love their job. Right. They really wished that they were editing and publishing a book. They didn't want to be processing, consumer loans, right? And so when I remember thinking that, it was so powerful that this woman broke down in tears when I was letting her go. And she said to me, I'm like, oh gosh, I'm younger. And I'm like, please don't cry. Like, she said, thank you. Wow. And I thought, wow, right? But if organizations and companies can do that preemptively or proactively, like huge.
Exactly.
Like having the conversations of, why aren't you performing? What is it? What do you really want to be doing? That could be huge. And then you leave with a great relationship, that person will always respect you for treating them that way instead of putting them on a performance improvement plan that ends in a,
Yeah, and that you're doing that PIP just to like check all the boxes from like an HR or like a employment law perspective so that you could terminate them, and
Right, but how cool if you had the discussion, they went and left and followed their passion.
Yeah.
But that's not as easily done than it is me saying, as you know.
No, exactly.
And people need to get paid and make a livelihood too, so there's a lot to that.
When I was, years ago when I was very new to having a team of people, I wouldn't even say I was a manager, but I had like a couple people reporting. I was like reading books and like trying to figure this whole thing out. And I remember I can't remember which book it was in, but there was one about, giving feedback, and it gets to a point where if someone's not performing well in their position, letting them continue to do that is looking at it from the perspective of you're doing them a disservice.
Right.
Because they, like you said, without having honest and open conversation, they could be just, wishing they were doing something else, and you're almost holding them back from achieving something that's better for them.
Right. Absolutely. And it's a two-way street. Like that employee must have that relationship and conduit with you to be able to say, I don't think that this is for me. Or there's always a way. Maybe there's another position in the organization or someone else that you know personally where there's a fit for them.
Right.
So, and a MIP or a PIP should never, ever be a surprise. Right. And if it is, as the leader, you haven't done your job either.
Yep.
So
you said a lot of people ask me what a good leader looks like.
Yeah.
In your tell me what does good leadership look like?
Yeah. It's open. It's a leader has to care as much about their people as they do about their own success. That oftentimes isn't the case. And it doesn't mean you can't care about your company's success, but it has to be a good blend. And it can't be, it It can't, the scale can't be tipped to where, because then the leader will take more ownership in trying to own things and saying, look what I did, rather than, you know, and that's harder for small organizations than it is for bigger ones, because, you know, the bigger the organization, the bigger the role, the bigger the outcome, the bigger the profit, and people know they're not doing it on their own. But as you're climbing, or you're in a startup, or you're in a nonprofit, that's when it becomes a little bit harder, because you're trying to claim a stake, you're trying to broaden your market. You know, it's a fine balance.
Yeah.
So,
what are a couple examples of, you know, some very good leaders that you've worked for, and like what they would do compared to someone that maybe wasn't a good leader, and things that they would do that was negative?
I think of my first woman mentor, not my first boss. Actually, I have more examples of bad bosses than I do good, but I've had a couple of really amazing ones that have been transformative to me. And one, her name's Gina, she just retired. She always held you accountable. So whether it was good or bad, you were 100% accountable, and there was nothing that wasn't on the table to talk about. So if you come in, and, you know, at that time I didn't have children, but if you came in, I remember her telling this to somebody else on the team, and someone was up all night with their baby who was sick. And she came in, she was a mess, and she missed something, and, you know, she had this relationship of, I care about you, this is the work, and she really sort of made a stance in front of all of us on, if something like this is going on, you've got to be honest about it, tell us, you know, when it's happening, we'll get the support around you needed. So she had a great caring for the mission of the company as much as she did her staff. I think that makes a great leader. She cared about what she probably cared the least about what she was making a mark in doing. I think that's it. I think allowing your staff to have autonomy as well is something that makes a great leader. And then clearly articulating not just your vision, but how each of the people that work for you, how they contribute to that vision and mission, and just having that openness all the time. And then also having the gumption and the guts to correct something when it's not happening right in the beginning. And sometimes that's letting somebody go fast. Like the longer, you know, if you realize in the very beginning that they're not going to be able to, you know, cut it, you've got to, within reason, there's times that's takes a lot of guts to do, but it's important.
That's a tough one.
It is really tough, but.
How about on the flip side? Have you worked for any bosses or leaders that were maybe not the best, and what were some things you learned from that experience?
Chris, they'll probably all know who I'm talking about. No, not really. And there haven't really been that many, to be honest. But and not that they did this with intent, but when you have found the greatest people that you're surrounded by and you don't let them go. I see that with my clients. I have seen that and felt that personally as well in the past, which is a great thing for me to be able to coach on. Like, you got to step away. There's a fear, especially in the startup world. There's a huge fear of letting go, that somebody else isn't going to do it as good as you. But you should be doing the things that you're amazing at, and hiring your staff to either be complementary to you, carrying it to the next level, or adding into any of the gaps or deficiencies that you have. When you don't do that, and a lot of times I've seen big failures, especially in startups, where the owners or founders have not let go. I would imagine in startup and small business, that's probably a much bigger issue than in a big corporate world where you've got all sorts of... Because in a startup, it's like, I founded this, I started it, it's my baby. Right.
Yeah.
So, but I mean, it's similar to letting go of your children when you send them off to school. You know, they might not do it the same way you do it, but if they know what the good of the product is, they're going to contribute to that.
If you were to go back and work for a company, hypothetically, and you had the opportunity to go back and work for a big bank or, you know, an entrepreneurial startup, where would you put yourself?
You know, it's so funny because I think of that a lot. And I still may be doing that, so. I feel that the startup has given me, I love the excitement of that. I'm at a point in my career that's probably not something I would be looking after to go start again.
Right, exactly.
So, and I even feel like my own thing that I'm doing is like my own mini startup, which I'll never
totally
let
is.
go of, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I would likely go into corporate again.
Really?
Too. Yeah, I would.
That's interesting.
Yeah, but not for, not for anything. I'm not looking for any big, huge roles at the
Right.
moment. I'm looking to impact and do all the great things that Jayco can do. So
Yeah, so speaking of, the impact and,
Yeah.
what you're doing with your new venture, being here in Wilmington, tell us, how'd you find Wilmington? How'd you get down to Wilmington?
yeah, great question. So I grew up in Northeast Ohio, where it was cold and gray and lots of snow.
Yeah.
And made my way to Charlotte, where I spent 12 years.
And was that the
So-
banking gig that brought you to Charlotte?
You know what? I was in Cleveland, Ohio with what's now PNC Bank.
Okay.
Worked for PNC for a little while, but it was a smaller regional bank. And then I started with a startup there in
in Charlotte.
Cleveland. Yeah.
Oh, in Cleveland, you s-
yeah.
okay.
And then I moved to Charlotte and worked virtually. I did a ton of traveling. I had the top global pharmaceutical companies, top 20 global, all around, so I did a lot of traveling.
Oh my gosh.
Mostly, here, and then we started venturing out internationally as well. And that was hard to do with a family.
Yeah, I can
really
imagine.
hard to do. So, which is some of the reason I took that pause of like, I need to be doing something a little bit different.
Definitely.
But during that time frame, I was able to keep that virtual position and move to Charlotte. And we were there for 12 years. And I had some big life changes.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm here with just my girls for almost 3 years now. And
Awesome.
I had some friends in Charlotte that had second homes in Carolina Beach.
Got it.
So I'd come to visit, and then I'd come by myself and use their places, and I would visit. And I'm like, wow,
Yeah.
this is a really neat little pocket of amazingness. And then branching out and learning Wilmington,
Yep.
because when you're working virtual, it doesn't matter where you are.
Right.
And I'm like, gosh, if I'm branding and kind of expanding the coaching and consulting that I do, I love to be in front of people, and I'm trying to get connected in Wilmington, and have been doing that slowly in the last year.
Yeah,
which
I
has
think you've been
great.
doing a pretty good job.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks.
It's Wilmington's
good.
such a great town.
I agree.
Especially right now there's just so many good things going on, and there's a lot of small business
Right.
and
Good growth. Yeah, tons of opportunity. And I think too, like the small business owners I've spoken to in the past, and even here, Carolina Beach is all small businesses, but it's mostly, in the resort and restaurant industry,
Right.
right? So when you branch out here, a lot of times I think that people go into something that's their passion, but they don't have that foundational business experience always.
Yep.
So that's
it's a good target, a good market
Yeah,
for you and your
exactly.
services, right?
Right. So, yeah, absolutely.
So tell us a little bit about, we started to touch on this a little bit, but the executive coaching versus life coaching. And what are some of the similarities and differences between those different types of
Yeah.
coaching?
There's a lot of similarities. From the executive coaching, when I'm doing that with the CEO and organization, we're really focused a lot more on specific, as I had mentioned, vision planning and strategic planning. So more of the business related things.
Right.
So that comes first, and then the coaching, comes underneath that. Whereas in the life coaching, that's purely, one of the things when I talked about that discovery and reflection, it's, again, similar to an executive coming to me to say, here's what my problem is. When a human comes and says, what's a life coach? I'd love to have a life coach. Or somebody that's been through years of therapy and they're done with the deep dive going backwards, but they want someone to hold them accountable and help build a future and keep them, the momentum going and sustainability of what they've built upon.
Right.
The same process happens. What is it that you want to do? What is it that you want to solve for? And those become a little bit more of a plan for their life, honestly. And some of those examples that I think of that come to mind right away are people that are in positions that they're not happy with, and people resonate with my business background. So I don't work with a lot of people that aren't in some type of a professional
Right.
realm. But then there's this other upcoming where people are either not having to work for the income anymore, or they're empty nesters newly, or they're getting ready to retire. And they're like, what's this look like?
Yeah.
I hear story after story, I read articles. I just spoke to my primary care yesterday. somebody retires and within 6 months, they're gone.
I know, it's
I
crazy,
mean, it's
right?
so sad. But so
Yeah.
there's a way to like figure out, do you go part-time? Can you still advise? Can you be on a few boards? Like I've worked with a handful of individuals in the last 2 to 3 years that I've helped them figure that out. Because when you're like, oh gosh, you can only do so much when you're not working at all,
Right.
until you've lost that sort of fulfillment and purpose aspect. So that falls a little bit more in the life coaching type of realm.
Yep.
The subconscious mind work crosses. I use that a lot more in the life coaching than executive coaching. And then the executive coaching too, you have to get people that are willing to realize that some life coaching would be good for them, because that still feels and sounds really soft when you're marketing it.
Right,
Like,
exactly.
oh, what's that? I don't really need that. Where everybody can benefit from that.
Seriously.
So
I mean, I tell my clients when we're advising from like more of like a financial and business perspective, I always like to preface with, it's so much easier for me to come into a situation that I'm not deeply involved with. I don't have any emotions around it. I'm not close to it. I'm looking at it from a completely different perspective. It's very easy for me to help point something out that might not be going right or to solve a problem.
Right.
And I say, I'm sure you could come into my business and tell me some stuff that I'm not doing right, just because it's just, you're so close to it and like the emotional attachment to it.
Yeah, for sure. And it's so interesting you would bring that up, Chris, because I've had some clients in the past, not many, but they'll say, oh, you don't know my industry.
Right.
I'm like, that's perfect.
Yeah, that, even better.
Exactly.
Even better.
Like
Yeah.
you can't talk the lingo. I'm like, I don't need to talk your lingo. Like, so yeah, that's key.
And another thing is, talking with people, it's like, Tiger Woods had a coach, right?
Yeah, right.
Like the best top athletes in the world all have coaches. So it's
They
like,
do.
if they don't need a coach, or like if they have a coach, like
Why shouldn't I have
why
one?
shouldn't I have a coach?
Right. Yeah, you're absolutely right.
And I mean, I guess, coaching, I've started using the word coaching a lot more. And I don't know if that's just because of my progression in my career of, going from being a one-person show where I had to do everything, then to having a couple people, to now having a larger organization where I spend more time trying to help, bring the next level of leadership to come around. And I've just been using the word coaching more. Do you think that's because of the progression I'm going through, or is that like a more kind of like the fractional thing? Is that like more of like a newer, like trendy kind of thing to say?
It's probably a little both, but mostly the latter, I bet.
Yeah.
Yeah, probably the latter. So, but it's good. It's guidance that you're providing, and you said something, and I lost the thought. But you just said something in that I was gonna talk about. Oh, I know what it is. So, if you use your organization, as an example,
Right.
to have someone that comes in as a coach. So when I worked at the bank, and that was a while ago, that was the first time I ever saw what an outside professional executive coach would be brought in, and 9 times out of 10 they were brought in for an executive that was failing. And I'm like, what? I remember thinking even then, why are they bringing him in or her in at this point? Like, how cool would it be to have like somebody stand alongside you along the way to coach you on the great things, to prevent, like, again, preemptively and proactively, to prevent them from needing someone at the end. So when I have smaller companies that I'm able to go in and be able to coach, not in a group setting, like group setting's great, but to have them individually or even situational coaching. So the packages that I sell are typically 6-session packages for an individual.
Okay.
But then there's an ongoing, so people do that 2 to 3 to 4 times is the norm. Over time, 1 year, sometimes bleeding into the 2nd year. But after that, when they've got the methodology down and they can do it themselves, then they're able to contact me for situational coaching. So I'm developing this case for the board, can you review it? Or I've got a difficult board member, or I've got a difficult peer, I'm not sure how to go to my boss about it. It gives them somebody outside of your organization that's not just a mentor, but that can help guide without them having to come to you to be like, I'm not getting along with so-and-so, not sure what to do about it.
Yeah.
So
Do you think
that's been really fun.
Do you think that in that example, when they bring in a coach for a failing executive, is that an example of not the best leadership at the top? Because it's like, oh, we don't know how to solve this problem. Or we weren't proactive about it. So instead of, I don't know,
I think that happens less than it used to.
Yeah.
Back then, I was at the bank in the late 90s. It was extremely political. And it was extreme. I was in corporate HR for a while where we did succession planning and talent mapping. And you build this thing out for a year and you say, here's who's going to go where. And so for someone to not be on that path when you said 8 months ago that they're going to be, it looks like a failure that they've designed someone to be here and they're not.
Right.
So it's almost like a double-edged sword in what you just said. So yeah, it's a true lack of leadership in a way, but also in another way, it's like I was wrong. I couldn't admit it, but that was in a big corporate culture and a little bit dated. I don't think that happens quite as much today, but probably a little bit.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
No, it totally does.
So I got to see a lot in the last 20-some years.
I bet.
Yeah.
What do you think like some of the biggest learning opportunities were for you during those 20, 25 years?
I knew you'd ask me that. I think that I used to think that two biggest things on that, and one of them is I used to think that everyone was exactly like me, where I had the grit, I had I grew up I'm the last of 5 kids. We had no money. We had a lot of love, and we had a lot of set your mind to it and you can go get it done, which equated to a lot of hard work.
Right, exactly.
I thought everybody was like that and would go out and be able to figure it out and do it on their own. Didn't mean I could always do it on my own, but I always found a way to get it done. So during my later years in the bank, before I went into the startup world, people want to be led. More people than not, and a higher percentage, want to be led. They want to not just be told what to do, but they want to be told, like, where's the journey and where's the path? Where are we headed? Tell me what my part in that is. I used to think, people don't want that. And I learned that really early on, which was great. Wished I learned it even earlier.
That's a really good one.
Yeah, really good. And a lot of people think like, why aren't you doing this, Chris? I know how to do this. Why aren't you doing it that way? Everybody's so unique and different, which is also the beauty of, the human race, honestly. Yeah,
truly.
So
I was talking with a client the other day, and he said something so spot on to that. He said, I need to remind myself that not everybody thinks the same way that I do.
Right, exactly. Or goes in the same pace, or...
Exactly.
Yeah, I know. A lot of the Kersey and Myers-Briggs plays into that wonderfully. So, my 4 letters and where I'm at is the 2% of the population, which was compelling to me to read the scientific, journey that these psychologists went on to discover this since the 1970s. I'm like, oh, okay, this is why. But then it also gives you a roadmap for, how to work with people and how to be. I wasn't always patient. I'm way more patient now than I ever was when I was younger. I'd be like, well, I need to go and I need to go faster and you're not keeping up.
Does having kids have anything to do with becoming more patient?
Yes, it does. It does. But I didn't have them for a long time, so I think I learned a little bit that before them, and then that's a whole nother realm of patience.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
And then the other, there was 2 main things to that. The other thing was I used to think I have to do it all. I'm going to do it all alone. I'm going to prove to you or whoever or that I'm going to do it all.
Yeah.
And the power of connection, which is some of the things I'm getting ready to announce in my group coaching sessions. The power of the networking connections. It's like you can have, no one's going to take my idea and do it exactly how I would do it.
Right.
So there's no fear of that loss. But the way that you can be just to a completely different level of functioning and success with other people around you is profound. And that I hadn't learned until the last 10 or 15 years, honestly. Maybe 10.
So tell me more about the group coaching and what that looks like, and it sounds interesting.
I know. So I have a level of the group coaching will make it more accessible for people. Accessible from a time commitment and accessible from financial commitment.
Right.
So I hear those two things a lot, which is why I thought, gosh, my mission is to help all kinds of people. They'll be the same types of people, but to be able to get a broader reach, and also to have them get a sense of how I operate too. Like, I'll never accept a client who can pay me that I don't think I can help. So we have to resonate on personality. I need to know that they're really in it. Some people want to hire and say they have a life coach or a personal coach or an executive coach, just to say they have one. If I can't make change, I'm not going to enter into that agreement. But aside from that, this group, I'm going to do two different things. There'll be 90 minutes, two different sessions, with 1 week in between. And it's all about reigniting fulfillment. So there'll be two different buckets. One will be for your personal life, one will be for your professional life. So there'll be different things that we talk about in those, but also the beauty of that is so many times when I've got individual clients, I'll connect them with others, with their permission, of course, because I'll be like, oh gosh, John over here has, Susan's exact, what she's done, what he's done are similar, and they both come at it at different directions. They should talk, and it would be amazing, right? So to have this, 10 to 12 people, I think not more than that, because it'll get too big, in a 90-minute session to really start looking about, what that looks like and feels like, will be helpful.
I'm sensing the collaboration from the
Yeah, exactly.
coming out with that one.
Yep.
So how would that be different than like a peer group, or is it similar? Or
Yeah, it'll be different from a peer group, and I've facilitated those, not as a coach, but as in business. I think the biggest difference is I'm going to be leading them a little bit more than the peer group. So I'm going to be leading them, pulling out and extracting, sort of what the common themes are and what they're struggling with. Second session will be coming back into that to identify and prioritize, like what are the barriers? Same principles we talked about earlier, like why are you here? What's prevented you from getting to where you want to be? But to be able to share it just sparks like tenfold ideas that people will have. And then they can also engage if they want in a situational type coaching, or if they want more intensive, we can do that too. It's a great way for them to network and learn other people, but also learn about my style as well.
Yeah, definitely. So. And to your point, there might be someone else in that group has been through a similar situation, or, and it's like, I was dealing with that, and I can share with you how I got through that, and
exactly.
So on and so forth.
Or what mistakes I made that I would urge you not to make.
Yeah. So will they, in those groups, will it be would it be co-ed groups, or would you have one for men or one for women, or it doesn't matter? Or
yeah, I'm starting out with co-ed.
Yeah.
That always seems to, women have this group that they like to have together, it seems like, which maybe I'll do in the future, but there's so many different thought processes that men versus women go through that I think it's really important to hear, because that woman executive that's sitting at the table has a husband at home, perhaps, or someone else in their life that might be going through something that you as the executive is also sitting there thinking. So it gives them insight to oh gosh, I never would have thought that he's thinking this about what I'm doing, or how we're talking about things at night, or not, you know?
Yeah.
And then the only thing that I think is going to be really interesting, it'll sort of be like an experiment for me, is to see if I do professional versus personal, how much of that bleeds through,
No, exactly.
Because it always does.
Yeah, it's got to be so aligned. Is there anything that I haven't asked you, or any kind of last things you want to say about yourself or your business, or just any shout outs or anything?
I don't think. I feel still new-ish here. I've got a lot of passion for people. I know the business. I know how things work. I've been successful in the businesses I've been a part of. And I'm here and ready to dive in, and I've got some small contracts right now that I'm working on, and still have virtual, which I'd rather have more in person, which I love. I love the face-to-face and the body language and all of that. So yeah, I think it's the next couple of things I'm embarking upon. I'll be having an announcement coming out for middle of December for some of the first starts, and then going heavy into it in January with the group sessions.
Awesome.
As an addition to what I've been doing. So yeah.
Awesome. Well, having gotten to know you over the past couple months and have this conversation, I think that anybody would be able to benefit from, on the life side or the professional side, from working with you. So
yeah, thank you. Thanks.
So thanks for coming on, and thanks for sharing.
It was a blast. So
Awesome.
thanks.
Thank you.